Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm your host, Amanda Lamb. In today's conversation with WRAL Hidden History reporter Heather Leah and news production assistant Arri Woodhouse, we're talking about another very cool piece of Raleigh's history, where a parking lot stands today, a former castle. Yes, I said castle, on the campus of Meredith College. Welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, Heather, Arri, I know that you have visited this location. How did you find out that this castle had been on this location and it's been gone for decades?
So I am a current student at Meredith College. And while we were having our tours and having our introductions to the college, it was briefly mentioned that it was once a castle. And even in our Johnson Hall, they had a huge picture of what the campus used to look like. And we thought that, like, wow, the campus used to be a castle. I mean, who doesn't want to be in a castle?
And it's probably one of those things where it really piqued your interest and you thought, well, I want to know more about that.
Absolutely.
And we have some pictures here. So this is a really fun mystery. Tell me about this castle and, describe what you're showing me here in these pictures.
Yeah, so in the picture that we're holding, you can see that the castle is huge. It has balconies, and it shows all of the previous students. You can see they're dressed in white.
It was used as the college.
Yes.
Yes. And tell me about the roof line. I love the roof line because that's really when you think of castle, it's all about how the roof line is.
Right. The structure of it gives early 1800s, 1900s castle.
Yeah.
Kind of a Gothic vibe, right?
It looks like a Disney castle. If you think of a giant, huge castle in the middle of downtown, it was 4 stories tall, had majestic brick turrets. The castle was red at the time, and it was Queen Anne style. It was actually designed by the same architect who made the governor's mansion.
Very cool. And how was this used? I mean, it was part of the campus. And when was this, and how was it used?
So this was originally the castle was started to be built in the late 1800s and then the early 1900s. And it was the original campus. This was the first building of Baptist Female University, later known as Meredith. And in fact, there was a lot of there was some level of controversy about whether or not women should even be educated, and we have some interesting quotes to share on that in a bit. The first year, they had over 200 students, and some of these pictures here, you can see the students just really filling the balconies of this castle, dressed in white, as Arri says, and it just looks majestic, but they actually pretty quickly outgrew the campus, which was on a square. And they added, it sounds like 4 other buildings, but by even the 1920s, which isn't that long, they already couldn't really use the castle anymore.
Because they just needed more room.
It
wasn't the right fit for them. Well, we will be back with more after the break. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. So what happened to this castle? I mean, it feels like they should have kept it, for posterity and for history. But what happened to it?
So in the 1920s, like we said previously, they really outgrew the square that they were on. So Meredith moved, but the castle was still left behind. We kept finding references to a Mansion Park Hotel. And we were like, Mansion Park Hotel? And when we researched the castle, we eventually pieced together that the hotel took over the building for decades after.
It was probably a hotel longer than it was a college.
Yes.
And Arri actually came to me. I didn't know about this castle, and she asked me, there used to be a castle in downtown Raleigh somewhere. Where was it? And so we started digging into this together.
How did our hidden history reporter not already know about this, Heather?
Because it's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what happens. This is how it becomes hidden history. So we actually had to piece it together, looking at old newspapers from the early 1900s, the state archives, and doing some deep research to figure out what happened to this castle and what became of it.
So where did this stand? Because my understanding is it's now a parking lot, right?
Yes.
And it's not on the current Meredith campus.
No, the Meredith campus, it moved to a farm on the outskirts of Raleigh.
Right, which is no longer the outskirts of Raleigh.
Definitely not. So yeah, it became this fancy hotel, and we actually have a picture here, and you'll be able to see it in the story that we will have online. It says Raleigh's most comfortable hotel. We actually have some postcards that people would send from the hotel, often to people in New York. Seems like a lot of people
there was a lot of people from New York that were sending postcards
coming to visit our castle hotel. But eventually the hotel moved out as well, and it became an apartment for it seems like one person lived there, from what we can tell, W.S. Murchison. But it also housed various state agencies. And we actually saw a picture, it was heartbreaking, of the castle being torn down in the 1960s.
Aww.
Yeah.
So what street is it on?
Gotcha. So it's literally, this was the thing we wanted to figure out from the beginning, right?
Yes.
Where did it stand? It stood across from the governor's mansion.
Oh,
Directly
wow.
across.
Okay.
So if you stand on the governor's mansion today and you look across Blunt Street, I believe that is where you would see the parking lot where there would have been a castle.
Where there would have been a castle. So I know we've actually talked about castles before. This is not the only castle. And just back up a little bit. What qualifies as a castle?
We've talked about this in the past. Honestly, to me, what qualifies as a castle is something that looks like a castle, right?
Okay, that's fair.
If you look at it and it looks like what you would envision a castle looking like, turrets and I don't know what they're called, but those little, the way the brick comes up and they'd hide behind it and shoot the arrows out. If it looks like a castle, it's a castle. There are a lot of castles in North Carolina today. Mm-hmm. One of them is very close by, also part of a university. UNC has Gimghoul Castle, which has quite a history and a lot of legends and spooky stories behind it. I'm sure we will talk about that for Halloween. There's also a castle, but that one's closed to the public most of the time. But you see it from the street a lot of times. I think a lot of people have seen it from the street. And then there's also a castle in Jamestown, Castle McCulloch. So that's only like an hour to an hour and a half away. You can tour that castle, and it's beautiful. And that one originates in the 1800s. So it's pretty cool to look at the architecture of it. And then there are several castles as you go out further into the mountains. There are castles you can stay the night in, get married in.
Yeah, we have a whole episode from our summer excursions in July. So if somebody's interested in castles, they should definitely go back and take a listen to that one. And this is just one of many interesting reports, Heather, about hidden history. Tell me where people can find the rest of your reporting.
Yes, so if you want to see more hidden history, just go to WRAL.com and search hidden history. The stories will pop up. There's a lot of them. So,
well, thank you both so much for participating today. And thank you, Arri. First time on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Love the Meredith students. I used to teach there, so I really enjoy them. And thanks so much for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. If you'd like to hear more about things to do, places to visit, restaurants to enjoy in North Carolina, check out WRAL Out and About. It's a weekly podcast from WRAL News. Find WRAL Out and About in your podcast app.